The physical challenge of winter workouts is obvious, but what about the mental benefits as Ohio State looks for a new group of leaders? Welcome back to a Boren Blitz. The beat is brought to you by the Waterworks. Zach Boren is back. He's still busy unpacking every box known to man, but I was able to find a little bit of time to catch up with him. He was also on the live show last week at Roosters, so we've got to catch up a little bit with you, Zach, but the number one thing that people asked after a couple weeks ago when you talked about mat drills, after the physical part, how do you become a better leader?
Well, first off, it's great to take a break with you from unpacking and talk a little Ohio State football. No matter if we're talking about the offseason, it's great. Now, in regards to leadership, man, this is the offseason is so much of where the rapport with the guys, your voice, so many things are created. It's not like training camp comes around and guys automatically just rise to the top and become the pseudo leaders or captains of the team, right? Like it starts the first day of off-season training, and that comes in the weight room, that comes during mat drills, that comes during the team runs where everyone is being tested emotionally and physically. It's the guys who find their voice then, the ones who step up then, the ones who start or where you see guys start to gravitate towards. Those are your leaders, right? Because it's the same thing in the season when it's a tight game against a team up north or at UT in Austin, right? No matter what it might be, when you are in a heavyweight fight, it's the same thing. It's the same mentality of when your back's against the wall in, workouts, mat drills, team run, all of those things. So you look for those people to step up as well. And the same guys that are stepping up now, finding their voice that people are gravitating towards, those are the same guys that need to really be the voice of the team come the football season. So it's a crucial time for some of those guys. Now, on the flip side, Austin, I've seen it where you start to see some of those weight room or workout warriors really rise to the top and guys start to gravitate towards them. But then when the pads come on, kind of goes in a different direction, right? And it's something that the coaches need to be mindful of, because if you know there's a guy that once the pads come on isn't the same dude from when they're just, when you're in shorts and T-shirts working out, you need to make sure that you are steering that direction of who are the go-to guys.
So you're talking about a couple different things at once there, and some of this is going to be natural. Some people are alpha mentalities, the workouts, the pads, everything else is always going to be A+ and 4 to 6 A to B for them. There's also guys where you're trying to bring that out of them. It's not maybe as natural to them. And we've heard, Urban Meyer back in your era, Ryan Day now, Mickey Marotti throughout both of those. That's like sometimes you have to, manufacture that. What does that look like? How do you actually develop that with someone who maybe Ohio State needs them to take on that role and they're not quite comfortable with it?
Well, that's a loaded question because I agree with some of it, but I disagree with some of it. So first and foremost, you hope one of your dudes on the team that is your highest caliber player has that voice in him and is comfortable doing that. If not, Austin, what Ryan and Urban and Mick and what those guys are talking about are there might be a guy who is a leader. There might be a guy who wants to be in the spotlight from having other guys lean on him, be that workhorse. He might just not know how to, right? And that is completely different than someone who you want to manufacture, be that person, but they just don't have it in them at all, right? So this is the time of year where you find those guys who have a little bit of a voice. When the going gets tough, they step up and you see guys gravitate towards them. Those players don't so much back down from when people are looking at them to be the leader, but they might not just have that extra juice to get it over the top or that vocal standpoint. Like Urban Meyer used to always talk about Tim Tebow, right? Tim Tebow was a very vocal leader. Well, you had a guy like when I played, like John Simon, who was a great leader, but didn't have that vocal aspect to him and never wanted to have that vocal aspect, right? Yeah. But you found ways where he was still a very very productive leader. Now you've got some guys where, whether it be, a middle linebacker, whether it be a quarterback, whether it be someone in one of those positions where if it were like a John Simon, you want them to be able to vocally be that leader as well, not just leading by example, not just from a physicality standpoint, but also get over the top. And so that's where a lot of that coaching comes in, a lot of the one-on-one. During the offseason, they create the leadership committee where they will engulf those guys. It's a small group, not a huge group. And it's literally coaching on how you vocally lead your team. Because Austin, at the end of the day, we're dealing with 18 to 22, 23-year-old guys, right? And sometimes that vocal leadership can come off the wrong way. Sometimes it can be attacking. You want it to be in a way where you are including everyone. It's more so, hey, let's come together, not point the finger, right? Yeah. One of the best leadership I won't call it seminar, but one of the best leadership councils I sat in at Ohio State was Teddy Bruschi. He came in and talked to us. And one of the best things that he said is when you are vocally leading, you don't want to point the finger, you want to pull the thumb, right? Like how am I going to motivate myself? What can I say that puts it on me and puts it on us as a team, not pointing the finger at someone? And so the little things like that, that's where they learn. But I can guarantee you, especially knowing that they lost, Arvell, Reese, and Sonny Styles as the middle linebackers who were their vocal leaders. You've got, Julian Sain coming back as quarterback, but I think everyone's been talking about how he needs to be more of a vocal leader. So it's going to be crucial for especially the dot positions, because you want them to be those guys to really wrap their heads around this leadership role physically and emotionally.
Yeah, I think it's a great point, Zach. When you look at this leadership group that is coming back for Ohio State, they're halfway there in terms of captains already. You have Brandon Ennis and Austin Sareveld returning. I don't think they're suddenly going to lose the respect or the authority in the locker room. But you mentioned the defensive side of the football, and we can expand on that and have Luke Montgomery and Carson Hinsman in that mix, Jeremiah Smith as well. There's no question at all about his work ethic, and maybe he will continue to be more comfortable speaking up in year 3 for the Buckeyes, taking on that mantle in the room. You look at the other side of the football, that's, I think, where the questions lie, because you mentioned the linebackers not being there. Caleb Downs is gone. Caden Curry and Caden McDonald are both gone. It's another year where you have to find some of that. You hope or you assume that Kenyatta Jackson will do that on the defensive line, that Jermaine Matthews can do some of that with Jalen McClain in the secondary. And then it comes down to someone we've talked about a lot. Like, is Peyton Pierce going to take not just the on-field playing role, but the off-the-field locker room leadership role by the throat and drag this defense forward? I think, because I don't really have any doubt about the offensive leadership. It doesn't even – well, I know you'll push back on this. I was going to say it doesn't have to come from Julian Sain, but he's the quarterback. He better do some of that. So I'll correct myself in real time. Like, there are enough other places around there that, like, I don't really have that much concern about the offense. And I'm not necessarily concerned about the defense, just more curious, I guess.
Well, you know me all too well. I think on the offensive side of the football, there's only one person that can be that leader, and it's the quarterback position. And I think that's why you saw Ohio State be so successful with Will Howard in 24, because he was a vocal leader. And I think part of the reason, we have seen some phenomenal quarterbacks come through Ohio State, like elite of the elite. But if you look at the guys who really moved the needle and won a national championship, JT Barrett and Will Howard, both very vocal leaders, guys who literally their voice was heard in the locker room, and they could command a huddle, they could command a sideline. Everyone had their respect and attention. And so Julian Sain needs to be that guy. I don't know how. Obviously, I shouldn't say I don't know how. He's not there yet, but there's a lot of coaching that needs to go into it. So what that looks like, I don't know how, but they will find that. On the defensive side, obviously, there can be a multiple people, right? Obviously, you brought up, the safety position, like a guy like Caleb Downs, linebacker, defensive line. Like, there can be some dudes across the board that can take that leadership role. Now, in saying that, the guy that you brought up that I'm most excited about is Peyton Pierce. Like, I think this is his offseason. He screams screams leader to me from how I see him play, the heart, the effort that he plays with. And now knowing that he's going to be the lead guy and probably going to be the dot guy calling the defense, this offseason's huge for him. And I can see him kind of putting his arms around that defense and really growing as that vocal leader.
And it's pretty obvious also why Ohio State has to have that, not just because they want to win a national championship and you need that leadership to get there, but also with the strength of this schedule and the difficulty that's out there. I know you've been breaking it down for weeks and you've been dying to talk about the way that the dates fell, the road trips that Ohio State has. What is it that stands out to you?
Well, I'll say this is how I'll start off. And I've seen multiple heads of college football talk about it. I don't think I've ever seen Ohio State going into the season talked about having the number one hardest schedule in the entire country. Austin, right. You probably know statistics.
I don't think it's ever happened. No,
yeah, I don't think it's ever happened. And so for everyone talking about how Ohio State has the number one hardest schedule, there are some tests, man. And I think you have to look at the stretch, from Indiana on, right? Yes, UT is going to be really hard going down in Austin, but it's sandwiched between kind of two cupcake games, right? And you're coming out of fall camp and you're still feeling pretty good. And juices are going to be flowing for that. So that's obviously a massive game, but I don't see it as, oh man, like you better go in there and win. Now you look at October 17th on, you're going to Indiana, who's going to be elite. Then you have a bye week, and you better get your mind right. Then you're going on the road to USC, and everyone's talking about how great USC is going to be this year and how much money they spent in the portal and in recruiting and the talent that they've got coming back. Then you come home against Oregon, which is going to be another elite team, right? Mm-hmm. And then you kind of got Northwestern, Nebraska back to back, and then you finish with Michigan at home, right? Like you look at that stretch, man. And in those, 6 games, you could be facing, Austin, 4 top 15 teams, top 10 teams, right? And 4 out of 6 games. Like, that's going to be huge. 2 on the road, 2 at home. Like, that's big-time football. And even when you go before that, like, I think Illinois is going to be a really good team. We've always seen them play us tough. And at Iowa, when's the last time we went to Iowa? It's the last time we went to Iowa when we lost in 2017, right? So that's the last time we've been to Kinnick, and it's been, if my math is right, that's 9 years, and none of these guys were part of the team then. Heck, you look at the coaching staff outside of Ryan Day, Mark Pantoni, and Mickey Marotti, Larry Johnson. I don't think anyone else has really been to Kinnick Stadium as a true position coach, right? And so, like there's just some really tough tests, but I look at Indiana on, and it's the last stretch of the season, and especially your body's starting to wear down and you see injuries come into play and things like that. It can be really hard on the Buckeyes.
Yeah, and I think you're trying to find maybe some silver linings in that. You mentioned they're technically back-to-back road games, but there's an off week in between there for Indiana and USC. Like, you don't have to go consecutive road games the way that Ohio State did last year. That's really a grind. You don't want that. I think they got a reasonable draw in that respect. It's not overly daunting. The teams weren't going to change. And I think that the fact that Texas is still included on this schedule, when I don't think that Steve Sarkisian wanted it to be there, only adds to the degree of difficulty. And I've said this before, Zach, to you many times. Like, I'd rather not see these major non-conference early season games continue. I don't think that we fully see eye to eye on that, but like the benefit as the Big Ten has become more competitive has vanished. Again, you don't need it for the strength of schedule. You don't need it to impress the College Football Playoff Committee. And I know that Ross Bjork and some of the people over there in the Fawcett and the Woody weren't thrilled that I said that the Alabama and Georgia series probably don't need to be played. I don't think that that's Ohio State not wanting to. I think that it's probably more of Alabama and Georgia that would be driving that conversation as the SEC adjusts their schedule. But that's a long-winded way of saying that game's going to happen no matter what against Texas. But, it carries a lot of risk, I think, to play those. That is no longer a necessity for Ohio State. And that's not to say that they're scared of them. or anything like that. It's just like, what's the point? You're going to play SEC teams in the playoff.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, we disagree a little bit. I love the big time non-conference games. Now, in saying that, I love them when the playoff is at 12 teams, right? Because I think when you win that game and you take care of business, it's even a bigger mark on your resume of look what we did. Now, as the playoff expands, if you get to 16, then I might become 50-50 on them. If it goes to 24, there's no point in them, right? Because in 24, the best teams are going to make it in the college football playoff anyways, and there's not going to be any debate, so to speak. I say that now, but my God, right? Like how much debate is there at 12 teams right now? Tons of debate. And when you have a big non-conference game in the beginning of the season and you see how that plays out, like that can always be a tipping point. You go to 24, like Ohio State and Texas are probably making it every single year unless there's a disaster, right? Yeah. And even if it goes to 24, Austin, we haven't gotten into this, but seeing the Big Ten's idea of a 2014 playoff this past week that was released by ESPN, I almost think conferences should then go to a 10 game conference schedule, right? You start the year off with kind of two, I want to call them cupcakes, but we can all say cupcakes, right? You start with 2 cupcakes, and then you've got a 10 game conference schedule. And now you're playing another opponent in your conference, because how many times with how big these conferences are, you get to the end of the season and there's questions about, hey, what's the tiebreaker? How do things go, right? Like all those things. And there needs to be a clearer vision, I think, of the cream kind of rising to the top in the conference. And when you're only playing 9 conference games and there's 18 teams in your conference, you're not going to play a lot of those opponents, And so it will be interesting to see what they do, where the college football playoff goes. I mean, I think it's a great test for Ohio State to start the year, especially going on the road. And if they win that game in Austin, my God, it just projects them especially with their schedule, even more leniency for a slip up here and there for them still be solidly in the top 12.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I mean, it's a risk reward situation. I just wonder how significant the reward actually is. We can see it for this year, given the rest of that strength of schedule. But that's the other part of this. When I say you no longer need to play Texas, Alabama, or Georgia if you're Ohio State, it's because of what you mentioned with the Big Ten. The strength of the Big Ten has changed that dynamic. And as you're looking at it into the future, still playing 9 conference games and having an unbalanced schedule home and away and barely even coming close to seeing half of the league, I mean, that's not conducive to the league. It's not conducive to the television inventory for Tony Petitti, to put it in the terms that might actually drive that decision. But the reason that I bring it up is I know it's sexy and it's awesome when you have these non-conference games, and a chance to go to Tuscaloosa or Athens or Austin are awesome places to see college football games. But what are we missing right now for Ohio State? If you had that 10th conference game, maybe Penn State still exists on the schedule for Ohio State. And that's what I'm saying. Swap out Texas, Georgia, Alabama, whoever. And then you're thinking, well, who you're missing? Washington or Penn State? And I know Washington has no historical ties to the Buckeyes. Penn State obviously does. But the fact that you're having to sacrifice one of those games because of the expansion of the Big Ten while trying to manage 3 non-conference games is what drives me crazy. That game should always be played, whether Penn State wants to call it a rivalry or not.
Yeah, I mean, we talk about how hard the schedule is, and I'm still bummed that Penn State's not on this schedule, right? Just because it has turned into a pseudo rivalry. It has turned into, it's almost always, Halloween, it's the first weekend in November, right? It has been, and it just kind of kicks off November, which is the championship month of, hey, man, it's the big boys are playing, right? And I even think if you look at Penn State's schedule, they obviously don't play Ohio State. I don't think they play Indiana or Oregon this year. I don't think. Now, you can fact check me on that one, but it's just like when you play 9 conference games, there's not enough matchups, especially when you're in a conference like the Big Ten, where it is starting to become so deep. There are becoming a lot of talented teams. So it'll be interesting to see what they do. I was not for 24 at all until I think I saw this past format that the Big Ten rolled out. Now, obviously, it does away with the conference championship games. I am completely fine with that. I think there's no path towards those still surviving. Now, I might be wrong, but just when you start looking at the playoff and keeping the quarterfinal bowls, the big time bowls in play, and all those things, like you need to do something. Either move the season up, get rid of the conference championship games, do something.
Yeah, no Indiana and no Ohio State on that Penn State schedule this year. So you're right about that, Zach. They do have Michigan and they do play USC. So obviously, in this league, you're not really going to be able to miss every single challenge, but that's just half of the top of the league. And that also then affects fans and attendance and broadcast ratings and everything else that people, don't love to talk about. That's not the on-field product, but like the Big Ten is in a position where I do think that it can fortify itself by playing more conference games and not worrying as much about SEC or ACC scheduling or Big 12 or anything else. Like that's part of the reason that you expanded to 18 in the first place and you took those teams on the West Coast. But, we're not going to be able to solve that problem, at least until you're commissioner.
Yeah, which might be in like 20 years. Who knows?
I hope it's sooner than that. That'd be a lot of episodes of the Boren Blitz before then and now. Great to be back having Zach Boren on a Monday on the beat, presented by the Waterworks. A lot of good stuff in there, from workouts to the schedule as we really ramp up here. We are inside a month until spring ball begins. I can't
inside
wait.
A month?
Oh yeah. Before spring break.
Oh my God. That's insane.
Yeah. Time flies. Woo. I believe, let me see here. Let me check this count. I think we're looking at March 10th, I believe, for day number 1, Zach.
Woo-wee.
Yeah. Right. So not that much time for winter workouts left either, but time moves fast. We'll break it all down as we always do. We'll be at Roosters later on with Bobby and Jay-Z. And of course, Byrne will be there. And then next week, as long as Zach is done unpacking all those boxes, we'll be right back here for another Boren Blitz. Thank you to the Ohio State captain for joining me on the Austin and Byrne Show. I am merely Austin Ward. We'll talk to you tomorrow.